Very spooky. Very spooky-ooky. Ooh! No idea if anyone could hear that sound, but it was very spooky. If you could hear it, if you could hear it, knock once. So yeah. So I have no idea. And Angela, I do not have my phone with me. I have no idea what happened to it. So if you're slacking me, texting me, no idea. So that's cool. We're on a roll here. We're on a roll. Happy Halloween. We built this one up. Let's see if we deliver. Let's see if we deliver. Welcome, everyone. It's your favorite holiday.
It is. Halloween is my favorite holiday. And so I'm so glad that everyone could join us. Obviously, I am with the illustrious Olivia Newton-John today.
Oh, yes. Wait, I forgot my whole thing.
Your whole
I forgot
shit.
my persona. My
You're
whole
ruining
persona.
The whole...
Wait, sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what did she say again?
I have...
Something stud.
Yeah. Tell me about it, stud.
All right, let me do it right into the microphone, into the camera. Tell me about it, stud. And then she drops it.
And then she stomps it out.
She uses her red high heel, which I'll leave it to your imagination to know if I'm wearing red high heels.
So the closest we can get to red high heel is I have the red or burgundy colored cape that I bought from Toronto from a family who has passed down the art of cloak and cape making. So I had this
wow. I thought this was like a a special from what is the Halloween store?
Spirit Halloween.
This was a Spirit Halloween special.
For years I had a cloak from Spirit Halloween, and this year I went all in.
Do you mind if I smoke?
On the expensive. I might need a drag on that as well. So I've never smoked a cigarette in my life.
Nor have I. Can you tell by the way I'm holding this?
That's fine.
Can you tell? Are you all dressed up? I know that Angela on our team representing TFSX is definitely dressed up, and I just wish that she had a camera visible because her costume is adorable.
She is the mural fairy today.
She is the mural fairy. So we love our friends at Mural. We're big fans and users of Mural. And we often in our programs will say, because anyone that's been through our programs knows there's a lot of behind-the-scenes magic.
There is a lot of the behind-the-scenes.
There's a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, and some of it's magical. And so when they transition to other activities, you know, their stuff is pre-populated. It just happens, and we say that it's the mural fairy, or the mural elf.
That's right. It's just the mural fairy.
So Angela took that to heart.
There's an actual mural fairy. Yes,
and she dressed up complete with the ears, the point. So she's like a mural fairy elf. Like she's got both. She's got wings, and she used company assets to produce a backdrop, a gigantic mural board behind her. And if you all, maybe we can convince her to allow us to share a picture of her costume in socials.
This is how it's actually supposed to be, where you can't see my face, and it's like, you know.
Nice.
I could be the Grim Reaper. I could be a druid monk. I could be a vampire.
You could be
whatever you want me to be today.
You could be the one of the guys from Star Wars.
Oh yes, I could be a Jedi.
Obi-Wan.
That's what I'm going to pretend to be today is Jedi. So
I really wanted you to wear your Letterman sweater to be the Danny to my Sandy.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think everyone will agree there's great disappointment in the land.
There
Stud.
I'm Danny years later after he joined a cult. You don't know what happened
fiction.
After the car went in the air. By the way, there is speculation by fans of Greece that they died, and that's why the car floats up into heaven afterwards. That there's a whole story about the
That's
fact
false
that they
because
had,
there's
they
a
had
Greece
died.
too.
They're not in it.
They're not, but they
That's why they say they died, because they're not even in.
That's really depressing.
No longer there anymore.
That's really depressing.
Sandy and Danny. So anyway, off with the cloak top. And happy Halloween to everyone. Later today, when I go to scare kids, I'm going to have a whole skeleton makeup, but I couldn't spend the rest of the day in makeup. So
yeah, I was surprised that you showed up without the makeup. But
no, I can't spend the whole day in oily, gooey makeup.
We did have one meeting before this with other partners, and that was funny because this is a little bit more glam than I typically, and a lot more hairspray.
You got the leather jacket on.
But let's be clear, like I had lots of different outfit choices that I was considering. I didn't actually, commit or work on any of them, which is the problem. But like I was going to be a black swan. So there's a lot of Foresight ideas.
That's right.
I had the idea of the cone of possibilities.
You just wear a cone.
Where you just like wear one of those dog cones, And those were all ideas. And then I thought I could go as Taylor Swift's friendship bracelet. There was tutorials on how to make, but I didn't do any of it. I didn't buy anything. I didn't do anything. But today, when I did my hair, I don't know. It was a low humidity day. I'm not sure, but it was like really like big, like curly and big when I did it. And the costume then came to me. I was like, what do I have in my closet? I have this leather jacket.
Right, because when we go out on Foresight workshops, many times you dress as Sandy from Greece.
Right.
So it was already there.
I'm going to be honest that I have had this leather jacket for quite some time, and I bought it during the pandemic, during one of my binges, the online shopping binges that many of us had. And I've never actually worn this. Like, this is it. This is it. I mean, obviously, we live in Florida. There's not a lot of need. And whenever we
not
pack,
a lot of chances to wear a leather jacket.
And whenever we pack to go places, like, I want to be practical. So, like, this is not going to be the most practical. Like, if you're taking one jacket.
I love how you're just holding this fake cigarette the whole time while you're explaining everything. You're like, so, and also, I can tell you've never smoked before. Like, this
okay.
would, yeah.
Okay.
So, there you go.
Okay, stud.
Tell me about it, stud.
Tell me about it, stud.
Well, as I said, happy Halloween to everyone.
And I know you would not approve of this costume. Because you no, and this is a good segue, because you do not, it's not even the commercialization of Halloween that you don't back, although that's, I'm sure, part of it, but you'll spend some money on Halloween. You're fine with that. Yeah. You like the spooky side of Halloween, not the gory, not the Chainsaw Massacre.
I don't like the American Chainsaw Massacre thing. I like the ghost, werewolf, vampire, spooky forest folk, light in the distance that you don't know what it is. You're scared. I don't want anybody to get chainsawed. I think that's a little ridiculous, but
yeah, I don't know if this will come through, but we have the sort of the ominous.
Yeah, well, yeah, sort of like that.
But it's more like spookier.
Yeah, you got to have a little bit of violin and strings in there and all. So I like the spook. That's good. That works. I like that.
Yeah.
Frankenstein, those kinds of things. A ghost. I like lots of ghosts.
It's similar, like when we transition into, which, tomorrow is basically Christmas.
Tomorrow starts Christmas. That's right.
After we cross this. And we've had a lot of discussions about how you approach Christmas as well. And more of the sort of like
it's the same. There's really not a big transition, It's like you want spooky, I like the mystical spooky Christmas part. Yeah. I don't want it to be elves
jingle
with
bells, jingle all the way.
no.
Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer.
No, that's why I always like the Mannheim Steamroller. It's like
Yes.
it's got the spooky sort of synth sound to it.
I mean, this cloak could even work like
Oh
Father
no,
Christmas.
no!
And the carolers. I mean, there's a whole.
When you see the family that makes these,
Okay.
they show them like you're in the forest with the snow, and you're.
I don't recall when you purchased this.
It was a couple of weeks ago.
Oh, okay, it wasn't on one of our trips.
I spent a little money on it.
I know, clearly it's nice.
It's custom made. See, she even said, like, are you sure you don't want the armholes? So she said, you want the armholes. And there's giant pockets on the inside.
Wow, this is a very practical cloak. It's useful for various. I mean, I don't know.
On the site, it said, for warmth and witchery. For warmth and witchery.
They had you at the witchery.
They had me at the warmth and witchery part. Because I want to live somewhere cold, like Germany or something where, I know Germany during the summer is not cold, but, winter.
It's never cold here. It's never cold here.
Right, that's the point.
So I don't know. I learned some stuff today that I didn't know.
I don't know. You know that I like the spooky.
I knew that.
Mystical.
I didn't know all this about the cloak.
By the way, if you want to listen to a great podcast, BBC4, you can find it on Spotify. It's called The Witch with India Rakison. I am on episode 10 today, and I could not believe, this is a great segue for us. I could not believe this. Episode 10 is called The Palm of Silver. And she's going through the whole history of the witch trials and witches through, and what it means to be a witch today. And it's not with a pointed hat and the spells and the crooked nose and all that. That was all made by the patriarchy. Believe it or not.
Shocking.
Shocking.
That's the patriarchy.
Exactly. No, it was, the historical element. But she spoke today, in this episode that I listened to today, she's speaking to a corporate witch in England who graduated from Oxford, doctorate from Oxford, and makes over $1 million a year advising CEOs throughout Europe through witchcraft. So I am in the wrong business.
Okay, so say the podcast again so that Angela can drop the link.
It's called The Witch. You can find it on Spotify, BBC4, and it's hosted by India Rakison. So I think that she has now found it. It's really good. It's goes through the history and a lot of it's very sad because it talks about like things that we've lost. That those two who were into herbal medicine and there's just some amazing people on this podcast. You'll love it.
It's interesting because I think that in some ways, obviously history repeats itself. And when you have individuals that don't seem to be aligning with the dominant narrative or the current power dynamics and the systems that are in place, you get labeled. Like, I mean, I don't know that futurists today are being called witches, but sort of like it sort of, right?
Yes, it's a very similar thing.
So I think that it's those are interesting parallels, and we were excited to offer this opportunity for a live stream. This is on our normal date of the week or day of the week or day of the month that we do these, but we could not resist a Halloween special.
Of course, it's Halloween,
and
it's my youngest daughter, whose birthday is on October 29th. She just turned 24, so I say always that she was born in the shadow of Samhain, which Samhain is the actually Celtic name for Halloween.
Yeah.
Because Halloween means All-Hallows Evening.
Yes.
Because the Catholic Church turned it into the next day as, All-Hallows Day, the Saints' Day. They didn't want the spooky part.
Yeah.
But Samhain is the, visitation of the dead, and you've got to, mask yourself so they can't find you and all.
I sent you, speaking of birthdays, I sent you yesterday that the woman that made, I don't know if you probably can't see it because it's off camera, but we have those needle points, those dragonfly needle points.
Yes.
So the artist that made that needle point for us and the team that we had her make that are beautiful, they have a skeleton key in the middle, and the dragonfly wings. She was sharing yesterday that her husband's family, going back generations, has this thing where a child is born on October 31st.
I know. It's
like
crazy.
Every 45
we
years. And so she created she showcased the fact that she has started a needlepoint where she has captured all of the the birthdays of October 31st, the years.
I know, it's crazy.
And so even children that weren't like due around like on that day, like they're early or they're late or they're
even her son, it was born in 2017, was supposed to be born on December 6th, came on Halloween.
Anyway.
So all the way back to the great-great-grandfather, the great-great-grandfather, the great-grandfather, the grandfather, the aunt, but she was still born.
Yes.
The him and his son were all born on October 31st.
Wild.
That's wild.
That's wild,
That's
friends.
wild.
There's something.
Yeah, she's like, tell me that's not something.
That's crazy. So you were saying about Destiny's birthday, or was it
October 29th? She's my Halloween child, and
red orange hair.
The only one born with the red orange hair. She's and it's beautiful, but yeah. So we've always taken Halloween very seriously.
Yes. So we decided to honor our founder and host this Wicked Opportunities live on this date. For those of you that have been around for a bit, it's not shocking. We've been celebrators. If you've been to any of our programs recently, all of our backdrop here has lots of Halloween, which, in the past we've had hiccups with that situation. I mean, just saying, not all parts of the world celebrate Halloween in the same way.
That's true.
And skulls and witches can have different meanings in different cultures. And so when you just hypothetically host a very important business meeting in the studio on Zoom, and midway through, you realize why the person on the other side of the screen has been looking at you really inquisitively and uncomfortably. You realize it's because you have the skulls behind you. This wasn't this year, but in previous years that's happened.
That's true. That has happened before.
So anyway, so we wanted to do this live. We try to do these lives monthly. We try to do a podcast weekly. We have fallen pretty short on the weekly podcast as of late, but we're hoping to get back into it. But, Wicked Opportunities, we talk about taking the idea of wicked problems and flipping on its head and fueling our work, ourselves, our systems with foresight, specifically natural foresight. And today, the tie-in with Halloween, we wanted to talk about a future that's alive. And so we played off the it's alive. Yeah. And alive, for those of you that aren't aware, is a recent ebook that Frank W. Spencer IV published that has been crazy popular, shared all over the place. It really resonated with people, which we love to see that.
Yes. I'll give you a little tie-in to between the ebook Alive and the podcast The Witch, because she was talking on episode 10 about the tarot cards.
Okay.
And I know that Angela, knows about this as well.
Yes.
And one of the really cool things about the tarot is, and that she was expressing, because there's a lot of different angles and ways that it can be approached. But this one particular woman was saying, and again, I'm late to the party here, that it's not really about using the cards to tell anybody's future or fortune, but what it does is it lays out a story in front of you. It's storytelling. Mm-hmm. And that either you can say like, oh, that story doesn't resonate with me, or it does resonate with me, and it causes the one who's being read to begin to discuss their life and to reveal things to themselves. They're like, oh, the reason it's resonating with me is because, or the reason that doesn't resonate with me, blah, blah, blah. And it causes them to tell their story.
It's a mini personal scenario.
It absolutely
told
is.
in tarot cards.
It absolutely is. So it's all about narrative and it's all about story. And that's what the ALIVE acronym is all about, it's about laying out a story for you, a new story for you to investigate and to walk into and to tell. Because I heard someone a very popular someone, I won't name, saying the other day that these acronyms have zero value because they don't have any action orientation to them.
Emphasis added.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a written something. So you definitely added the emotion that you interpreted, but that's cool. That's cool. Yeah. I just wanted to be clear.
Well, if I could remember the exact quote, the person said, these are these are garbage.
Be careful. Be careful.
These are garbage because they don't lead to action.
Yes.
And sip of tea now because it's Halloween. My tea brewed.
Yeah.
And that's wrong because they are like the tarot cards. They're laid out before you to get you to respond to them in a new mindset, a new story, a new way of seeing the world, right?
I don't think I've ever told you this, but my great-grandmother on my mother's side would do tarot cards.
You did tell me, actually. Oh. I remember this.
Yeah. I wonder where her tarot cards are. I've got to. I bet you my mom knows where they are.
That would be amazing.
I'm sure they're somewhere. Yeah. I'm going to find them. I think that it's always so interesting. And again, I think everything is interconnected. But I think people more and more are realizing, obviously, the power of story.
That's right.
Which is refreshing, right? Because I think, it's easy to sort of dismiss something like story, or it has been traditionally easy in modern day. Yeah. Obviously, we've been telling stories since we've been painting on cave walls, and we know that stories have been instrumental in the transfer of knowledge, beliefs, culture. Really, in many ways, I think those stories kept people alive. And now, the power of storytelling that can be done immersively with a lot of the technology that we have and the craft of foresight. Because, of course, with foresight, when we do stories, when we do what we call scenarios properly, not with a 2x2 matrix, but really immersive, proper stories and scenarios, you can engage someone in a way that allows them to get past their biases, really engage and own a pathway forward, potentially avoid some things that they don't want to go, and meet and have to deal with, and in terms of threats, but also, take advantage of opportunities. So, yeah. I mean, I think the storytelling component is so powerful. And I think you're right. I think frameworks, we joke about the acronyms all along. I mean, if you read the ebook, it starts off with basically alphabet soup of sort of the different acronyms. Yeah. And we joke a lot in our programs about how futurists like acronyms second only to I think government people. Or military.
That's true.
There's a lot. I mean, there's a whole. I will say that at Disney, we used to joke that we should have a new hire dictionary of acronyms.
You need them in most industries today because there's just so many acronyms.
Right. And
so I could easily say yes, and I have said we don't need another acronym. But the reason that the ALIVE acronym has been created is to counter these acronyms that we have like VUCA, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. TUNA, which stands for turbulent, uncertain, novel, and ambiguous.
Yes.
And then we have a new one on the horizon. It's only a couple of years old, called BANI, which stands for brittle, anxious, nonlinear, and
incomprehensible.
And the problem with those acronyms, or my problem with those acronyms, you can agree or disagree with this, is that they tell a story. They're a tarot deck, so to speak, of fear and of a response to the way that the world is becoming more and more complex, more and more ambiguous, more and more volatile seemingly, although I would argue it's always been this way, and we just cover it up with the systems that we have. And then they're an indication of our response of control to those environments. Oh my goodness, look, the world is so turbulent now. It's so volatile. It's so uncertain. What you're saying is I need somebody to come tell me a way to make it certain, less turbulent, less volatile. I need to be less anxious. And this is my response to the world. The problem is that, and we're all guilty of it, I'm guilty of it too,
right.
is that when I have that response to the world, it's not an indication that the world is off. It's an indication that I'm off.
Yeah. I mean, we in our primer, if you're interested in reading our Foresight primer, which is a great introduction to our natural foresight framework, it's got job aids and references. It's just a great, even if you've been practicing for a while, it's a great quick read to share with others who are interested in what foresight is. We open up that primer with a discussion of VUCA. I mean, yeah. I think it's a very accessible way to get people meet where they are, and so people really respond to that. They're like, absolutely, it's volatile. You're right. It's uncertain. It's complex and ambiguous. But the subtext is always that, and that's a bad thing, and that's a scary thing. So I will say that we've been, trying to challenge the idea of these acronyms for a while. If you look back to the first set of podcasts, which were that collection, I think is our proudest one. We love that collection.
Yeah, they're amazing. Yeah.
The first collection of podcasts, where we go through the 7 shifts of opportunity. And it was really, if you want a grounding on what we mean by wicked opportunities, go listen to those, 28 podcasts.
Yeah, I think it's 28.
28 podcasts. And there was one month where every month in that first collection, we took a wicked problem and we put it through its paces. And we used foresight to flip that wicked problem into a wicked opportunity. Mm-hmm. So I love everything about that podcast series. It was so good, and it's really evergreen. One month was focused on VUCA and flipping the script on VUCA. So even then we were like, hey.
Oh no, this goes way back.
No. And so I think if you're looking for some of the history and the breadcrumbs of how we got to Alive, obviously if you've been around us, you can see all the ways that this has come to pass. But I do think if you want a quick and dirty of how we got here, that 4-week series under that theme of shifting VUCA to a long now perspective, I think was the flip side. And that one was great because what we premised there, our premise was that VUCA is not the problem, it's our outdated mindsets. But to your point, in this latest published work is that, really sort of asking the question of like, why are we so compelled to create these frameworks that lead with fear, and what is that getting us? And perhaps that's the reason why, one of the reasons why foresight isn't taking as well, or isn't as as compelling or as sticky, if you will. And so you go a step further and you say, okay, well, I'll see you, VUCA, tuna, Banny, and I'll raise you.
It's a different narrative.
Yeah.
Because the narrative of VUCA, tuna, Banny, there's others, I forget what some of them are. Some of them are ridiculously long, supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, and you have to remember all these words, is they are all framed around us saying like, oh, the world's off its axis. The world is not off its axis. We're off of the world's axis. And Alive is a counter tarot deck, so to speak. I'm only saying that for Halloween. Don't get stuck on that. It's a counter narrative to say, here's how we ought to be viewing the world. And so we haven't even mentioned this yet, but Alive stands for abductive, liminal, interconnected, vibrant, which sounds like that one sounds like a throwaway word, but it's one of my favorites actually, and emergent. And so when we view the world as volatile, what we're missing is that it's not volatile, it's abductive, it's liminal, it's interconnected, it's vibrant, and our systems are not aligned to that frequency.
Yeah, so we perceive it as volatility,
Yeah.
uncertainty, and ambiguity. We perceive it as such because
it's like we're pointing at the world going like, oh, you, look what you're doing to me, you volatile, uncertain, and I'm going to find a way through strategic planning or foresight co-opted as from futures thinking, et cetera, to get you back in line again, to get you back in line. Yeah. And so then when we have people stepping forward saying like, I don't like any of these acronyms because none of them drive to action, what we're saying is, I'm going to get you back in line again. I'm going to find quick actions to get you back in line before I change the narrative to take completely different actions. So it's wrong to say that an acronym is not useful because it doesn't drive to action, because what you're saying is I want to take action before I change my mindset. And that is deadly in this environment of the meta crisis or the perma crisis or the poly crisis, however you want to frame this. I love Jonathan Rowson's framing of the meta crisis because he says it's really not a crisis that's external, it's a crisis of the internal. And that's why meta is so great, because it means above and beyond. We have to go above and beyond, and we have to go above and beyond VUCA, tuna, and BANI if we're going to really change this story. And that's why we created the ALIVE acronym: abductive, liminal, interconnected, vibrant, and emergent.
We can go through each one. I just want to again reinforce that this bias toward action.
Yeah, somebody even wrote me and they said, Foresight has an action problem. Mm-hmm. We were like, Foresight has a time problem. Foresight has a space problem. Foresight has a word problem, Yeah. And they were like, I even think that Foresight has an action problem. That will throw you off your axis. Yeah. Because we live in a world that's like, if you don't drive to action, what's it worth? And I'm writing a new article right now called The Future is Bigger on the Inside, which is a reference to Doctor Who. 60th anniversary coming up, by the way. And, of course, the TARDIS is bigger on the inside than it was on the outside. And we love to think of the future as being trends out there and stuff out there and the future's out there and space out there. But the future has to be in here, and it's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. And that's what ALIVE's all about, really. But
Fantastic.
You were saying we have a action bias.
No, I just think that, I think it's important to note. I think it's easy to fall into that trap, even as Foresight professionals with a lot of experience. It's like we feel compelled, like if we're not showing some kind of return, if we're not tying it back to action. And I think part of is how you define action, obviously.
Yes.
And to your point, to me, understanding our mindset and unpacking our mindset is a type of action. So
it's the greatest action in this environment right now, and this where we are in the cosmos that we could possibly take.
So I think that we're so used to singing for our supper that we like try to just bend over backwards to be like, no. We drive to action. We're action focused.
Yep.
And I think we'd be better served to just sort of challenge what action. Action for action's sake can definitely cause more harm. So I think being the voice of reason to say, you know what, we'll get to action. Don't you worry. But if we rush to action, it's going to perpetuate the issues we already have, the dominant narratives we already have. So be really careful. Be really, really careful. We've used the term quick wins. It's just, you've just got to be, these words are loaded.
They're loaded.
They're loaded.
Yeah. And somebody was saying on a listserv that I was on not too long ago, they were saying like, my problem with Foresight is it doesn't help us to make decisions today. And not only does it, yes, it does do that. So I don't even know what you're talking about. But number two, what decisions today? Because a different mindset results in a different decision matrix. And so
that's exactly what Becky's saying now in the chat too.
Well, I can't see, so thank you for reading it. I don't have my glasses on, so thank you, Becky.
And she said maybe it's a shift in the way action is defined.
Yes! If I could read, I would have been celebrating you.
It just came through, so don't worry.
Okay. Becky, you're absolutely 1,000% right, because if we shift our mindsets, we shift our decision matrix. And now we want to make different kinds of decisions anyway. So careful, Foresight. Because are you only reinforcing the dominant narrative? Dr. Marcus Busey was saying to me this week, Futurists need to be reverse engineers of path dependency. So we're always like, oh, it's always forward. But what about reverse engineers of path dependency? What that means is that we're unpacking the path that's leading us towards the trends that we see and the things that we identify. Mm-hmm. Because we'll identify a completely different set of trends and decisions if we see the world differently. Mm. And that's what a live's all about.
So just to jump in here again, I know many of you have already read the ebook, so I think we're interested in sort of the off the page ideas, maybe how you landed on these words and anything else that you could add in terms of extra. So abductive is in contrast to deduction's top-down attempt to arrive at conclusions based on general principles, or induction's bottom-up approach to identify an existing theory as a cause for certain observations. Abduction refers to the process of formulating and understanding the larger environment, context, and relationships that are formed from the available parts, pieces, and data within that context, rather than decontextualizing the individual parts through observing them in isolation or relegating them to known generalizations.
That's right.
Such an approach is based on the recognition of complexity revealing more than the sum of the parts.
Yeah, because if you think about, and I don't know why, but when I hear the words deduce and induce, I always think about Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's probably, it'd be interesting to do a little survey, but I guarantee you that a lot of people think that.
Yeah. I'm going to deduce this, know. And deduction is the most simple thing and we do it all the time. We deduce a situation, right?
Right.
And then we don't think about it induction as much, but that's sort of, from the ground up. So it's the other way around. It's like, oh, I'm at a diner and I see a half-eaten sandwich. I can induce that someone may have gone to the bathroom and that they're coming back for their sandwich and there is an eater of the sandwich instead of the other way around.
Okay.
I see a person making a sandwich. I deduce they're going to eat that sandwich.
Okay.
Abduction basically says that I can sort of identify different contexts and how things are going to unfold from a context that is near or adjacent to it, but not the actual context itself. And and it means that the pieces and parts are very important. It's like if I see a rotting log in a forest, I need to be able to abduct the entire environment from that. Oh, there's deer that were here that actually soiled the grass, and then there's going to be these microorganisms, and they're going to create an environment that's different from the one that we can see. Or another way to look at it is I've experienced certain experiences in environments, and then when I'm in a completely different environment, I can say, this is the story that I might be able to tell from that because I've experienced a near but adjacent idea. So why is this important? Because the world works abductively. And we love to put it in little silos and deduce and induce, instead of understanding the connection across environments, which leaves out tons of the story. And when we do that, we get all brittle and anxious and worrisome and volatile, instead of saying, wait a second, there's an interconnected story, and I need to learn how to abduct my world, not deduct or induct it.
I love how this acronym speaks to the current environment, but also obviously lends itself to thinking about the future. And so when I'm trying to think about the future, there's parallels to the current, but I have to think abductively to get past the common misconception that the future is going to reveal itself like an extrapolation or linear reveal. So I love that this acronym does double duty. It helps me make sense of the current world, but it also helps me become a better futurist in sort of mapping future worlds.
Yeah, I can tell you that, one of the things I think about all the time is when we're writing scenarios, are we writing deductive scenarios, which are plausible, probable, or are we writing abductive scenarios? And we struggle with our clients with this because they're like, oh no, I read the scenario you wrote me and it just seems like I can't relate to it and blah, blah, blah. And why was it about this? And it's like, because it's abductive. If you read this scenario and apply it to your environment, you're going to have way more revelations than you would if I just wrote, and then you walked into a room and flipped on the light switch and you went into the garage and there was a robot and all the stuff that seems very obvious. Read between the lines abductively in the scenario and you'll get a lot more out of it than you would have if you had this, technological, straightforward story. And so we need to learn to live in stories and in worlds that are abductive. And what that also causes us to do is relate to each other in different ways. I stop trying to frame the whole world by my story. It's multiple ways of knowing. And when I think abductively, I'm thinking across multiple ways of knowing the world, and it gets me outside of my box.
Yeah.
And that's something that VUCA and Tuna and Banny and all of those other stories never touch on. As a matter of fact, they actually are against it because they're like, volatility. See, it's not volatile, it's actually abductive. But because I want to live in one way, I'm like, oh my God, when I experience different ways of knowing, look how volatile the world is. Look how messed up your mind is that you can't think in multiple ways of knowing. You can't think abductively, so you think it's volatile.
Yeah, I think
it's not volatile, it's abductive.
It's the lens by which you see it. And then I do think that's a feature, not a bug too. I think that we've been trained to be fearful of change and of the future because, again, the dominant narratives carry a lot of power. And there's a lot of concern if a broad spectrum of us became more comfortable with this type of thinking.
If we thought more abductively, what would that do to our organizations, our governments, our social constructs? It would change things drastically, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right, let's talk about liminal. Liminality refers to the time or space of disconnection from previous or future realities.
Oh boy.
When transitioning from one state of existence or meaning into another. Even though liminality can be uncomfortable, it is in the liminal spaces that humans enter a threshold of transformation, and without which we would remain comfortable in antiquated environments, experiences, and practices that no longer serve our growth nor aid us in achieving our higher order purpose.
Yeah. So liminality is, if abduction scared you, liminality will terrify you. And as a matter of fact, liminal spaces aren't comfortable spaces. They're very uncomfortable spaces. And we hear it today. Yeah. And people saying we're losing our identity and our tribes and all you're in liminality. And we're terrified of it because the liminal space is a dark space. And when I say dark, I don't mean a scary space, although it can be very scary. It's just a space where you're between worlds between worlds, a world between worlds. And it's in those spaces where we're forced to change. We don't change on either sides of the liminal space. That's where we try to find comfort. And again, when we're like, oh my gosh, it's so volatile, what we're saying is, I don't want to enter liminal spaces. I don't want to enter those spaces where I can't grasp onto something. I can't grab onto something. I don't feel like I know this place. It's not a familiar place for me. And it's in those liminal spaces where we change. As a matter of fact, in a very practical way, and I want to be careful with this, today when we're dealing with issues of trans individuals, they can feel very much like they're in a liminal space when people around them don't understand what they're feeling, what they're going through, because we try to silo the world into these, gender specific, it's male or female, and it's black or white, and so we can't stand those liminal spaces. But the world is made of liminality, as Sophie Strand says. All living things move. They have movement, and they're moving from one space to another. And if they don't, they're dead. Stagnation, we love stagnation because it's comfort, is death. And then she gives the metaphor of the butterfly, because you've got the caterpillar, and you can see the caterpillar. It's crawling around, beautiful little fuzzy caterpillar. On the other side of the cocoon is the beautiful butterfly with the wings, and we love the metaphor of the butterfly. But you rarely ever hear of a metaphor of the, squishy cocoon. Because what literally happens in that environment is the caterpillar turns into goop before it turns into a butterfly.
Public relations was like, look, the marketing team was like, goop.
Don't do the goop.
I could work with the fuzzy cute thing.
Yeah.
And I could definitely work with the beautiful butterfly.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a given. That's an easy one.
I don't know what I'm going to do with the goop.
In between stage, not sexy.
But the butterfly or the caterpillar's not scared of the goop. We're just scared of the goop, right? They're like, oh, this is the amazing part when I'm neither caterpillar nor butterfly. I'm in a liminal space. And that's where all the good stuff happens. It's where the change happens. We love to get to the butterfly, but there is no butterfly without goop. And right now, when you hear people like Daniel Schmachtenberger or Nora Bateson or Benita Roy talking about the meta crisis, they're talking about us being in this goopy stage and this liminal stage. The futurist, as I said in my new article, The Illustrated Futurist, seeks the goop or the fog. They love to live in that place. And that's why today we see a lot of futurists who have gone through the stage of, being an insights person or a trends person or whatever, hating the liminal stage. They're like, how do I get you out of the liminal stage? And futurists are always trying to push you into a liminal stage because that's where change takes place.
All right, so we have about 12 minutes remaining.
All right. So we have to do interconnected, vibrant, and emergent a little bit quicker, but that's fine.
That's all right. You know what? We're going to actually have an opportunity in our December Wicked Opportunities Live, which I'll plug now, that we're going to have an opportunity to talk with a couple of folks that are just near and dear to our hearts here at the TFSX family. They are awesome. Part of our family, and they're going to talk a little bit about their transformations experience, and I'm sure we'll touch on some of these concepts then as well. Yeah. Just a reminder, our Transformations Retreat is taking place next year. Around this time, Angela can drop in a link in the chat if you are interested in learning more. We do still have an early bird special. There are payment plans available. You can, sign up with a roommate and get a very, very reasonable rate. We're going to be conducting this retreat, and if you're interested in things like Alive and in transformation itself, this is an excellent opportunity for you to participate in an experience like no other. We've only done one other retreat, and almost everyone that went to that retreat last year is attending next year's retreat. Awesome. If that gives you any indication of how it went down. Really powerful, very intimate setting. So only a few spots really remain. But if this is something that's calling to you, if you're interested in learning more, please check that out and feel free to ask any questions that you have about the Transformations of Natural Foresight Retreat taking place in Maine next year. Okay, so we talked about abductive and liminal. Let's talk about interconnected. I think this is probably the most sort of commonplace word of the acronym. Yeah. So our cosmos is a web of interconnected components, both living and non-living. These interconnected networks are known as ecosystems, a self-sustaining feedback loop for humanity to thrive. A self-sustaining feedback loop. Period. For humanity to thrive, we must develop a greater eco-mind that views all of life from a holistic, interdisciplinary, and interdependent process of unending interactions. This means that we must consciously create a context for thriving, linking the well-being of the cosmos across generations past, present, and future, and understanding that our thoughts and actions ripple across space and time.
Yeah.
Interconnected.
So there's a lot there, and I won't spend a lot of time on it, but the interconnected makes a lot of sense. And obviously, you can see how these feed into one another, especially the abductive piece. I love this idea of the eco-mind. And I also love that it's human, non-human, and living, or what we perceive to be non-living entities, all in interconnection with one another. So ecosystems are made up of all of these different players and actors, right? And until we really fortify this idea of the ecosystem or eco-mind in our lives and our organizations and our governments, then we're not going to really operate in a symbiotic way. And again, this refers back to the VUCA when we tell people all the time, complexity is not your enemy, it's your friend.
Yeah.
Because this complex eco-environment, this ecology, ecosystems are complexity that give us more life. Diversity breeds creativity, breeds life. And so this is a pretty straightforward one, although there's a ton to be said here, and you can go look into it if you read the ebook.
Yeah, no, I think there is. And I would love to, I just want to point out that, I think whereas VUCA has a letter dedicated to complexity, which we agree the environment's very complex. We don't think it's something to be feared. I love how in the ALIVE framework and acronym, we've really teased out what complexity means.
That's right.
Because I think complexity itself gets a bum rap. It's confused with complication.
Yes.
People don't understand what it really is. And so, complexity means to be abductive, and complexity is those liminal spaces. Complexity is the interconnected nature of everything and everyone. Complexity is vibrant. Complexity is emergent, right?
That's right.
So inherently, we've captured the complexity component. All right, so vibrant. Vibrancy is the state of mind of being full of vigor, energy, and life. Don't we all want to be that? And is also understood as the expression of vibrations caused by sound or movement. In this sense, vibrancy as a universal constant that manifests as the qualities of conscious expressed in sacred mystery, spiritual I always mess up that word. Dynamism,
yes,
deep compassion and care, and actionable love. We said it, love. It says this dynamic transcends the lifeless scientism of modernity, and allows us to tap into the fundamental consciousness that is all around as a means to personal and collective transformation.
Yeah, David Chalmers, if you're interested in my sort of theory of change of consciousness, David Chalmers would be the person, because Chalmers, and I forget who his compatriot was, who have different ideas about what consciousness was. About 20 years ago, they made a bet that come 2023, we would be no closer to understanding what consciousness is. We wouldn't have figured it out. And of course, the data more centric guy was like, we're going to figure it out. I make the bet. Yeah. And the bet was like a bottle of Merlot or something, that was really expensive. Yeah. And Chalmers was like, we will not, because consciousness is the cosmic problem that can never be solved. Mm-hmm. And the reason is because Chalmers says consciousness, wait for it, this is really powerful, or you'll just think that we're off our rocker, but Halloween's a great day to say this. Chalmers believes that consciousness is a fundamental element of the universe that is alive itself. And that we've thought of it as like something that we formed through evolution, and I'm getting more conscious because I can do math at school or whatever. But it's actually something that wants to express itself through us. And the brains are like transmitters of consciousness. So it's our brains that are evolving over time to hold more consciousness. And consciousness is the universe becoming aware of itself, right? And so vibrancy is a frequency, and what this says, and I'll stop on this because there's a lot to say about vibrancy, it's my favorite one, is that that we need to be able to express emotional, sacred, and spiritual elements of foresight. Marcus Beasley talks about this because he talks all about embodying foresight, and he's really, we had a conversation this past week. He actually is writing a part 2 right now to the Illustrated Futurist that's going to be published in the Journal of Future Studies. And because he was so inspired by what I wrote there, and he was like, yes, because there needs to be this emotional, intuitive, spiritual, sacred side of foresight that cannot be expressed in words. It's actually dangerous to express it in words because it's a barrier to it. And that doesn't need to be quantified. It does not need to be quantified. And that is a part of the future we're not expressing. And so we never fully understand futurist thinking because we're afraid to express the vibrancy, the consciousness, the wavelength that can't be expressed in words and in numbers.
So amazing. I mean, and again, I think anyone that's spent any time in the KEDGE, the Future School, or now TFSX's ecosystem knows that when we talk about natural foresight, this is exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about not working against what just is organically emergent and happening. And speaking of emergent, I'll just quickly touch on that. Emergence is defined as the process of events or outcomes coming into view or being revealed only after a period in which separate factors converge and coalesce. And the emergent qualities of the world and of the future are really a futurist's best friend, I think, in many ways.
Yeah,
Being able to tap into that.
Helps us to go beyond trends. A long time ago, we wrote for Fast Copy an article on Beyond Trends, on Beyond Zebra. Dr. Seuss is on Beyond Zebra. What comes after the alphabet? It's really emergence.
Yeah.
Nora Bateson, I think, is a master of this because she talks about, and so does Marcus Busey, he talks about prevision. He's like, I'm not a visionary, I'm a pre-visionary. And it's those emergent elements that tell us more about what's trying to come about than the trends, which like are way down the road, actually, of siloing and manifesting objects. As a matter of fact, Marcus and I and others this past week were talking about the futuring as a noun rather than as a verb. And we like to make the world into nouns, things, that thing, this thing. But it's really about movement. It's about verbs. And emergence is about verbs. Trends are about nouns. Yeah. Emergence is about process, about verbs. And if we understand emergence more, then there's a lot to say about it.
And what's the irony there?
A lot to say about it.
What's the irony there that the way that we're suggesting we practice foresight and think about the world is action-based and it's verb-based.
That's right.
And it circles back around.
It's noun-based, yeah.
Right.
It's the verbs that, no.
No. You just said no. Emergence is verbs, right?
Yeah. Emergence is verbs.
Right.
That's right.
So when we talk about wanting to drive to action, again, it's reframing what we mean by action.
I mean, it's crazy because like drive to action and we want a noun, we want a thing.
Exactly. So
and not a process and a movement to understand what it means to be human.
Right.
So powerful. And if Angela could drop, by the way, if you want more of this, come to Transformations, as Yvette said.
Yeah.
Also on December 4th, in conjunction with Cheryl Deutsch, futurist in New Zealand at Think Beyond, we're going to be hosting a 90-minute webinar called Heart, Head, and Hand. And it's going to be all about holoptic foresight, natural foresight, and transformational futuring. And we're going to basically be talking about this kind of stuff. As a matter of fact, we'll even bring in the ALIVE acronym in there. And so I know Angela will be able to find this at Think Beyond. The link should be there. Heart, Head, and Hand. I think the registration is through Humanitics. And so I know that she's looking for that now, and she'll drop it in the chat before we sign off. So I'd love to see you all sign up for that. It's free. It's free. It's 90 minutes, immersive. We're going to do exercises, and we're going to go through the Heart, Head, and Hand framework. Yeah, which is what happens also at the Transformations Retreat. And so going to this is sort of a precursor to that Transformations Retreat.
I'll tease one more thing that we don't even have a link for while Angela's hopefully going to drop that in the chat. I love being part of a agile firm. We decided today that as a part of the announcement of a pretty big partnership we've got coming up, we are going to have an opportunity for those of you that want to read more deeply into these concepts around holoptic foresight dynamics, which is the philosophy that is embedded in natural foresight and is what we explore in the Transformations Retreat. There's going to be an opportunity for you to dive into some of the research with in more of a sort of a guided course component, and hopefully that'll be out. I think December is when we're targeting. So that'll give you an opportunity to to dive into that if you're interested in. Thank you for that link, Angela. Thank you all for joining. Happy Halloween. I know this is just the beginning of the day for you, because you will now don your makeup.
It's now kind of scare children. So.
Yeah. So
and give them candy, Reese's Cups.
Thank you for coming to this special edition of the Wicked Opportunities podcast live stream. Again, we'll be back together in December is our next opportunity. So we're going to take November for holidays, but early December we'll have 2 guests on the podcast live stream. First ever, we're going to have guests on the live stream, so you don't want to miss it. Great opportunity to learn more about Foresight and how it's being practiced in these situations and what it can mean to you and your. That was a cow. Did not mean to push that.
Can't see the future until the cow moves.
No, that's true. It's the cow from the Twister movie. All right. Well, you all take care. We'll see you all in December.